Our budget is based on the mayor's priorities that you know and have heard, I'm sure, many times as 4 priorities. But we're trying to move more families into self-sufficiency by addressing their unique needs. We're moving additional residents into permanent housing. We're concentrating on services integration and cross-systems work because we do not operate the Department of Human Services in isolation. Creatively using our programs to prevent the need for other services, especially preventing the need for child welfare and the involvement of our clients in the criminal and juvenile justice systems, and reinvesting our limited resources into better outcomes, because we know that the good outcomes are a lot cheaper in the long run than bad outcomes that so often we've seen in the past. Just to get to some of the big issues that we've heard so much about today, we are trying to preserve as much of the homeless continuum as possible. For 2011, our current fiscal year was funded with local appropriation dollars, a lot of one-time federal funding, especially for permanent supportive housing, and one-time federal TANF emergency contingency funds. Many of those funds are no longer available, and to make up for that loss, the mayor has recommended an increase of $14 million in local funds. We'll also spend about $2 million less in permanent supportive housing case management. This is a program efficiency rather than a cut. And we're expecting to move about $4 million of our rental subsidy cost into permanent supportive housing programs from local DHS funds to either federal housing choice vouchers or local rental supplement programs. That way we avoid using local dollars and transfer some of those costs to the federal government. Now, it's been widely publicized that the Department of Human Services will lose approximately $26.7 million in this one-time federal funding. With the additional funds that we've received in the mayor's proposed budgets, we still face a shortfall that we've projected, and in many of the original papers we submitted was $20.5 million, and that's what you've been hearing all day, is a $20 million shortfall. We think, especially with the reduction in program efficiencies, we can comfortably say that that shortfall is $18.5 million. So we've been looking at ways to modify or reduce that hit, but it's still $18.5 million is what we feel is the shortfall in the housing programs. We don't know exactly where those shortfalls would hit. We want to really bring a lot more of our stakeholders into the process. Today we heard so much and got some additional guidance. But even though we don't know exactly where those shortfalls would come, we do know that there are certain programs that are either mandatory or, even based on today's testimony and other input, we feel have the highest priority. Certainly the high priority of the hypothermia shelter for all of our citizens is the very important part of what we're trying to maintain. We're also trying to prioritize housing for homeless families, including temporary and domestic violence shelters, site-based transitional housing, and the operation of the Virginia Williams Family Resource Center. Housing programs where, and finally, housing programs where clients receive rental subsidies, such as in the permanent supportive housing programs. Now, if those were the programs that we all finally agree on are the priorities, that means that the biggest cuts will come in the shelters that operate during the non-hypothermia season, especially for single adults. So that's With that type of prioritization, we would expect that the total funding available under the proposed budget is $58.8 million. The total funding, the total funding to meet the priorities that I just described is $58.8 million. The total funding in the budget is only 59.4, only $600,000 left for the rest of the continuum. So if we were to, again, fully fund the priority areas, the kinds of cuts that we would be seeing would be the DC General family shelter capacity outside of hypothermia season would be cut about $7.1 million. The operation of the shelter for single homeless adults outside of the hypothermia season, approximately $10.3 million. Transportation services outside of the hypothermia season, $1.1 million. Outreach outside of hypothermia, approximately $200,000. In ancillary services such as feeding programs, medical clinics, etc., for about $400,000. And Chairman Graham, you asked for is clear of an identification of where the cuts would have to come. And again, these aren't cut or set in steel, but these, if we funded the highest priority programs, these are what would be left.